Okay, so let's look at the for loop to do the same thing we just did with the while loop. What we will notice though is that the for loop will be a much more compact way of accessing the data members of the list. So and we're going to find out, since it's a compact, which means it's a lot shorter in terms of writing it, in terms of lines of code, there are a couple things that will be taken care of for us. One, we don't have to assess the length of the list to begin with, just like we did in this example. Number two, we don't need to reset some sort of an index or counter to prime the loop. Okay? And we don't have to increment or have a statement for the incrementation of the index. So we can eventually get out of the loop, just like we did in the previous lesson. So how can we do that with a for loop again? So let's compare. Let me just delete everything we've done here below and just compare this for loop that we just did here and do the same thing on list one, right? So the first list has 2, 3, 8, and 9. We were able to, let's run this again with a while loop, right? So we could see the size of my list is 4. We were able with a while loop to access each data member. We're going to do the same thing now. And notice I don't need to reset the counter, okay? And we're going to set up the for loop in this manner. So for is the syntax for it. And then you're going to have to decide on a variable that will match the data member that you of each data member within the list. Let's for now just call it num, right? So a variable or number variable, right? Just you can call it whatever you want. And then you're going to do the syntax in my, and we're going to pick list. And I'm going to put a colon. And now print num. Notice how much more elegant this is. So what it does, it will take this num and it will assign it initially to 2. And that's what we will print. Then it will assign it to 3. And that's what it will print here. Then it will assign it to 8. And then it will put it in here. And then it will assign it to 9. And then put it in here. Now you don't have to call it num. You can call it data if you want. And then make sure that the variable matching it is data here. So that way it's more, how should I say, would be more generic. You could call it my data if you want, just so you could see. You can name your variables anything you want as long as you're consistent right here and right here. Okay? So we're going to keep it as my data within my list, and every time step through the list and show me what the data is. So let's see if we get the same result. And sure enough, we do get the same result, 2, 3, 8, and 9. Let me now remove the while loop so we could see it by itself, and remove this, the previous code we did from the previous lesson, and we're just going to keep the while loop in here. Okay? All right, so let's run this again, and there you have it. Okay? So can we do the for loop for any of these lists? Does it have to be of a specific data type? It doesn't matter. So I can put my list 4, notice how easy it is right here. And my data is simply a generic variable that will be equal to the first item in the first iteration of the for loop. So a for loop is really a loop, right? So the next time it will be going to 2, and the next time it will be going to 634. So it will adapt to the data type already in there, and it will print that accordingly. So if we run this, notice we get our 4, we get our 2, and 6.38. So much, much more compact, much easier to use to step through items stored in a list. So since this is your first time maybe encountering a for loop, how does it really work? What are the things that we could do in a for loop other than accessing a list? Can we have it where we can actually print numbers, for example? Just show if if we could set up a range to a certain number and print them, just like any other loop. Yes, you could do that. So you could do something like this, for, and let's say we want a value of some form, counter. Okay, and now and now I don't have a list, but I have to tell it the range of values I want to access. And then you're going to use the keyword range. So this is the time when you're not using a list, use the keyword range, and in it, say how far you want to go. Let's say I want to go up to and put 7 there, and let's print counter. And let's see what exactly counter will be printing, right? All right, so let's go ahead and do this. As you can see here, counter will be printing 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 items. This 7 here means 7 items, as if it's a size. Okay? Now, can we use this to access my list, for example, with something like this? Yeah, you could do with the same trick. So watch this. This is going to be a combination of things we've learned. So if you want to use range to access a list, can I do that? So you could do something like this. For, let's say, and we need a counter, or an index if you want to call it. You can call it whatever you want. In range, so same technique, but this time we're going to say len, length of my list, right? So what are we going to get here? We're going to get a 4, right? And then based on that fact, we can actually print my list. So it's a much longer way to do it, but it combines what we've learned in the while loop in this one. So much more efficient to use this. However, you could still use this. Okay, so let's see if it works. Okay, let's see if we indeed get 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 8, and 9. And sure enough, we do get our 2, 3, 8, and 9 out of this. So what happened exactly here? So the range is how many items do you want? Well, guess what? I know the length of my list. It's got 4 items. I can use that. This counter here, we know if you have 4 items, it's going to go from 0 to 3. So I can use it as an index for the list to display it. All right? So from the fundamental aspect of how to use a for loop just with a range, can I reuse it to access data members of a list? Absolutely. Is there a much more compact way to do things and make life easier? Absolutely. That's what we started out with. But in case you want to do one version or the other, you're welcome to it. We're going to be investigating more of this as we move to the next lesson, and I will see you then.